All right, we are the 100-day mark officially,
Woo!
um, until the NFL season. I can't believe it. It is almost there. I can smell the freshly trimmed grass of training camp. Uh,
You
I
can hear
can
Liam
smell the
Schreiber's voice.
what's that?
You can hear Liam Schreiber's voice, the opening of Hard Knocks.
Yes, indeed. Which we still don't know who that's gonna be, right? I haven't
Buffalo
heard any.
Bills,
Oh, it is the Bill. Okay, yeah. I
which
think I may have missed that announcement. To be honest,
yeah,
that's cool.
the Bears are
Okay.
playing the Bills in the preseason and doing like joint practices. So I'm excited for that
Oh,
episode
there you
for
go.
sure.
Sweet. Um, Not a whole lot has happened, obviously, in the NFL news. It's kind of, still a down period. But one of the funnier elements of news that's come out of the last week and a half has been Pablo Torre's, pseudo journalism. And he even says
The deep dive.
he's leaning fully into the like sensationalism of it, but still doing like real journalism. So it's kind of funny around Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson, their relationship, her role, how North Carolina has essentially banned her from the school. The school has now come out and kind of said, no, this isn't true. She's totally welcome. She just doesn't do anything for the school. So
We love her.
it's
She's
very
great.
interesting.
She's
Yeah.
great. We love her.
Um, I've always liked Pablo Torre. Even, I think I was first introduced to him on Around the Horn, which, by the way,
Yeah,
had their
R.I.P.
final episode.
R.I.P.
Um,
around the horn.
that was our childhood, really, of like the heyday of ESPN. I mean, you could say the heyday of ESPN was for a 30-year stretch, but the 90s was really where they were at their finest. And that's where, pardon the interruption, came
23
to be. And
years, right? With Around the Horn.
Around the Horn was around for, was it 23? Yeah, 2002. Yep. 2002 is
I
when it
mean, Dan,
started.
we're
Um,
both 34. I mean, that really
yeah,
was it. I remember
yeah.
those early days with Woody Page, and you had Jay Mariotti and Bob Ryan, and you were just hooked. For us Central Time kids, from 4 to 5, you got Around the Horn, PTI, and then Sports Center. I mean, that was 2 hours of
Sports Nation.
can't miss. Yeah, with Colin Cowherd beforehand,
Yeah.
it was can't miss programming. And so yeah, it's different. I mean, without shows like that, this format that we even have here wouldn't be as digestible. I mean, that was Zoom show before Zoom was a thing. You know what
That's
I
true.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's very true. The panel discussions virtually, that was kind of a trailblazer in many ways. Pablo Torre was a regular on there probably over the last
Yeah.
10 years. He's a former Harvard guy who wrote for SI, like, so he's a well respected. I think he's won some pretty substantial. I think Murrow, if I'm not mistaken. So he's definitely renowned, but he's kind of reverted to like or not reverted, but progressed to like a different form of breaking news where he's almost doing it like a magazine style, um, huge, piece of investigative journalism, but he's presenting it on his show in podcast form. So it's interesting to kind of see that, and people are reacting in
Yeah.
real time to this breaking news that he's
Like
kind of
if
coming out
Sports
with.
Illustrated was for a podcast. I mean, he really
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's good. It's a good niche for him. After getting fired from ESPN, part of the big budget cuts they did, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, for him to find this as his niche. It's
yeah.
good. It's good stuff.
And it's cool to see Katie Nolan's a guest on the show, and I forget the other guy's name, but they react to this news in real time, and that always makes it fun. But he's been on the last 3 weeks, the breaking the Bill Belichick Jordan Hudson story, wide open. He's well sourced as a individual, as a journalist, but even for this particular story, 11 sources from UNC, from other places that she has worked before, from people in Bill Belichick's circle. Um, a lot of interesting news came out of it. You were mentioning before we went on air here that, yeah, he was on Part of My Take and kind of discussed his findings.
Yeah.
Um, and since then, like, the initial findings was basically that, she's a thorn in a lot of people's side. Like, a lot of people don't like dealing with her, and that she's a, becoming, like overtaking all of Bill Belichick, and is making it hard to deal with him in any way. And that may have been part of the reason that the NFL was ready to oust him. Pablo found out that um, they may have known each other for several years, even going back to 2021. And then after his show with Part of My Take, where he kind of revealed this initial stuff, he came back this past week with more the Ring camera footage that we all remember from a year or 2 years ago, I think, that was released, um, of Bill Belichick leaving
Shirtless.
outside of the Boston, Massachusetts. Pablo found the place. It was an Airbnb, and Jordan had purchased the Airbnb for a weekend. And Pablo even talked to the owners of the Airbnb. That was their second guest that they had ever
Ever.
had.
Wow.
Was Jordan Hudson, and they didn't know who the guy was coming. But once they saw the footage, they said the first thing that alarmed them was that Bill had parked illegally in the spot that they literally had designated no parking here. Um, but they were shocked to see it was Bill Belichick. They sent it to a close friend of theirs to confirm that it was Bill Belichick, and the rest is history. That video apparently then got circulated and went out into the ether. But Pablo has found that Jordan attended Patriots games in specially designated seating that Bill Belichick had as far back as 2021. And they have screenshots of her at these games that far back. So it's wild. It's wild how crazy this story has been evolving. And obviously, at the heart of it, it doesn't really matter. It's the guy's personal relationships. Who cares? The funny part of it all is that this is the guy that was all about no distractions, buttoned up, take care of what you've got to do. And to see the contrast from that to then handing over the reins to a 24-year-old that he apparently trusts with everything, and is creating a massive distraction around his brand and around his potential employment prospects. That part is what makes this kind of hilarious and what makes it maybe more of a spotlight than it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what gets really interesting is the whole we were sold one thing. Oh, we met on a plane and this kind of fun fairy tale. I'm a highly educated woman. Bill's a highly educated man. And we just intellectually just, kind of fell for each other in that way. As here, let me check my mic here. It says I'm
That
coming
sounds good
through.
now. Whatever you
Okay.
did just now, it sounds
All
better.
right.
Yeah.
And so, listen, what the public doesn't like, we know this, whether it's politics, whether it's sports, whatever. We don't like being sold one thing and then finding out it's something completely different.
Yeah,
And if
hypocrisy.
and if the truth is, well, actually, this girl may have been 18 or 19 in 2021 going to Patriots games, and not you met when she was 21 and we were on a plane. That's a whole different thing. And again, it's like the fact that you're trying to sell it as it was something else shows that that there was kind of something shady to it. When Bill had a longtime girlfriend, was this going on? Was he cheating? And so again, you bring up the great point. Bill Belichick, a man
And she
who
could have been like a family friend or something, and they didn't have anything until a couple years later, but then they clearly didn't meet on a plane then at that point. So yeah, it is interesting.
and again, I think it drives home the fact that Bill Belichick, a guy who built the greatest dynasty in NFL history, who built the greatest stretch run in NFL history, who launched himself into the argument he is absolutely on the Mount Rushmore of coaches in NFL history. And you look at how it ended then, it ended anti what he built the fame and the fortune and the success on, which, as you mentioned, be buttoned up. He wasn't buttoned up at the end of his career. And those Patriots teams at the very end, when you had weird decisions about who was calling plays, all this stuff, you can maybe call into question what was Bill doing? How distracted was Bill? What was really going on in Foxborough during those last couple of years of the Patriots as Bill was trying to put it together with Mac Jones and all these other pieces? we'll see what keeps coming out. Follow Pablo Torre for more because he's not going to let off the gas. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah, it was funny just to see the reaction to all of that and the fact that he's he's like, this is my claim to fame now, the Jordan Hudson breaking story. Well, it is what it is. That is the world we live in today. But today we were primarily going to focus on kind of diving in. It's OTAs kind of just began, voluntary OTAs, and there's not a lot of crazy news. So this is a good time for us to kind of dive into our teams and look at their schedules and maybe put a magnifying glass on what the prospects are for the Chicago Bears and for the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming season. So that's going to be the bulk of today's show. I did want to talk real quick before we get into that. We mentioned on last week's show that the flag football has now been made an Olympic sport. And so in 2028, that will be the first year that it gets rolled out, and we'll get to see that on full display. We've talked in the past about Daryl Doucette III, who is he's won multiple championships in flag football and certainly helped grow the sport and give the man his flowers. But since maybe 2 years ago, when it was even talked about and hypothesized that NFL players would maybe get to be a part of this and go to the Olympics, he was the first to push back heavily. And
because he's the quarterback, I believe. He's the quarterback of
the quarterback,
like team.
Yeah,
Team
and
USA
he considers himself,
team.
the face of the sport, and whatever, that's fine. But he has come across as so petty and defensive from the jump about how we're not going to let NFL players take our sport, blah, 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 blah. He has now come out with a quote since this news that the NFL players will be able to try out for the team and compete in the Olympics. He said, quote, "This is a sport that we've played for a long time, and we feel like we're the best at it, and we don't need other guys," end quote. There were several other quotes about it. Just, trust that it's not glowing about NFL players, and Daryl Doucette is not a fan of having NFL players aboard. Look, man, at the end of the day, if you are the best, I mean, you said we are the best at it, then that doesn't even make sense. Yeah. Then you should have nothing to fear of competition.
Yeah. So we talked about this briefly last week, but I do think what's going to be really, to me, interesting over the next year and a half or so is we're going to learn about what this Team USA flag football organization already is, because apparently there already is a Team USA flag football team where you have guys who have been successful. They've won at a high level. And that's great. You need some sort of foundation, right? I don't know if the whole team's going to be built of NFL guys. I assume that's what the Olympics want. I assume that's what the NFL wants. I assume that's what the NFL players themselves want.
Well, the NFL might not want it. At least the owners, because, I mean, you get one.
Well, that's why it's the 2-player rule, though, right? That's why it's the no more than 2 players from each team rule. And I think it's smart. But
listen, with the amount of 12 personnel that the Pittsburgh Steelers run, I am confident that no Pittsburgh Steelers is going to be on this flag football team. It's just a bunch of big guys that
they don't need
strong.
They need some defenders. You know what I mean? You got to get some.
Yeah, true. Yeah, Minka Fitzpatrick.
I was going to say, there you go. So I think what's going to be really the fun thing to watch for us as fans over the next year and a half is the process of, okay, how many players legitimately want to do this, right? Okay, so then you get that large number. And then you say, okay, now we have to narrow it down by squad and by actually how many. We're going to have 300 wide receivers say they want to play. Maybe only 20 offensive linemen say they want to play, right? So, okay, well, let's then figure it out. Well, we need this offensive line guy, and he's from the Cowboys or whatever. So there goes another Cowboy player we can't have because, too many, right? So there's going to be a lot of that. And then it's going to come down to a point where I legitimately think the best thing for the team to do, because, again, we have to win gold in this, is to have an NFL team built of the dream team NFL guys. Insert your Lamar Jacksons, your Justin Jeffersons, all those people, right, who we drew over. And you're going to say, let's have 2 weeks of scrimmaging against Team USA flag football. And the coaches from flag, the NFL coaches will sit there and they'll look over the rules and they'll watch and say, hey, if the NFL guys are just dominating these guys, with very little practice, very little like togetherness, we'll know our answer. But if these guys are schooling NFL guys and embarrassing NFL guys, we'll also know our answer. There's going to be some NFL guys who translate, but maybe the team will be made up of the majority of these flag football professionals. I don't know. All I'm saying is I think that next year process is going to be really fun to watch. And regardless, I hope who's ever in charge of Team USA does what's in the best interest of us actually winning gold, because we cannot lose the gold in LA in 2028. I don't care if it's Lamar Jackson or insert this guy's name, as long as we dominate and we win gold.
Yeah, 100%. That is the name of the game. And they have won championships, so they're already establishing themselves as like the best in the world. Insert some NFL players into the mix, and I think it's not even a contest probably.
And Dan, listen, what do NFL guys who compete at the highest level love? They fucking love bulletin board material. This dude is giving them the bulletin board material, right? So you're going to get, if Mahomes wants that spot, he'll read this and be like, okay, dude, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
And then he'll show up and ball out. So like, I love it. I just love everything about it.
Well, and we already know they're all going to be way better at throwing the football. Because if he was remotely good at throwing the football, you'd have, at least, exactly. So like, it's that's going to be a tough one. I mean, Justin Fields would be unbelievable at flag football, I'd imagine. Incredible.
Talk about an underrated name, right? If one of the big guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson don't want to do it because of whatever, Fields, talk about a great name to slide in there.
He would be dominant. Yeah. And there's so many players I think we could name at the skill positions that would be amazing at it too. So it's a fun, exercise.
Speaking of Bears quarterbacks, really quickly, I don't know if we touched on this last week or not, the whole Caleb Williams article about him not wanting to be a Bear.
What, we didn't. Let's go there.
And I didn't want to force it because but I've seen a lot more talk on it over the last week online. And I quickly want to say I'm the
quickly recap.
So if you missed it, basically a book came out where everything that we were hearing 14, 15 months ago in the 3 months leading up to the draft about Caleb's looking for maybe ownership, Caleb's looking to maybe leverage position to not pay taxes in Illinois, Caleb's looking for a way for maybe to not go to Chicago because he doesn't trust the Bears and all this stuff. All of that turned out to be true. None of us during the time of it, when we went back to it, thought any of it was ridiculous of Caleb Williams. I think that's the thing I want to make sure I mention is like, agreed. I remember we could go back and find the footage from us doing the shows. None of that stuff bothered me because all of that was good due diligence by Caleb Williams and his team, because the Chicago Bears historically have never developed a quarterback. And what I love so much about the result of all this is you have a guy in Caleb Williams who, after a year that is one of the most tumultuous, horrible years you could have as a rookie quarterback, is so focused and bought in and all in that him and his staff and his people around him, they haven't even really made a comment about this book. Like, the book has died down. What should have been a mega story was really kind of a story and a book, and it's dead within a week and a half of the story being released because the dude is so laser focused, and the organization and Caleb Williams was proven right. They were not ready to handle it, but they made amends for their sins of last year and the sins of keeping Eberflus and not going to get Harbaugh. They've rewrited all of those wrongs in getting Ben Johnson and going all in for Caleb Williams. So I'm one of those people, like, it doesn't bother me at all. It was a non-story. So what? It was confirmed in a book. Who cares? All that stuff. If Eberflus was still the head coach right now, it would be threat level midnight. I'd be ripping my hair out because I'd be going, the Bears are the dumbest mother bleepers on the planet. But no, they righted the wrongs and they're moving forward.
Yeah. It could get really noisy there real quick with all of the change and all of the turmoil, as you mentioned. And instead, it's heads down. We're just working. Yeah. And I think that does say a lot about where they're headed and the regime that Ben Johnson is, bringing along. Not to say that his hands are all over this, but at the very least, the players don't want to make this a thing because they want to just dive into this new head coach and
Yeah.
buy into what he's selling. So I
And
think that does say a lot.
and Dan, from all of the stuff I'm reading from Bears Twitter, Caleb has been amazing in training camp
Yeah,
so far. Like it's
yeah. Let's
been
go.
drool over. So again, I know Bears win the offseason. I know. And it's a good transition because we're going to talk about what I
Well,
think of
yeah,
this
let's
Bears team.
let's
If you want
dive
to start
into
with the
it.
Bears, we can. I will I'll say,
Yeah, I'll
Dan,
pull up the schedule here too to share
great.
with
So
everybody. I'm
I
just gonna
got my
share.
I got my cheat sheet with all my notes and everything. So one of the things Dan and I talked about, when we did last week's episode, we wanted to focus on just kind of the release of the schedule. There's a lot to go over. We went through weeks 1 and 4 and the prediction stuff, and I do trust me. Even as we go through this, I do think, as we all know, past week 4, once you get into October, it's who the hell knows, right? Like, who the hell knows? It's all about health and coin flips at that point in time, because there's going to be surprises, there's going to be injuries. We know that. So I'll say this. Let's start with the fact that the Bears open week 1 Monday Night Football at home versus the Minnesota Vikings. That game, what a great start for Monday Night Football slate. The J.J. McCarthy story is going to be absolutely fascinating. And you have 2 high-powered offenses. You have 2 absolute offensive genius head coaches. You're going to get the first time to see, Ben Johnson and his offense. I think it's a great choice for them to be on Monday Night Football for the NFL. I hate it as a fan. I'm nervous as hell. I wish this was buried Sunday at noon. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it's going to be exciting. So some of my notes, the early bye sucks. If you look at week 5, there's the bye in week 5. I hate that.
Yeah,
Only
and the Steelers have a bye in week 5 as well, so
Yeah,
we share that
we
pain
agree.
together. It is brutal. It's not cool.
And
Not cool.
so I think why I hate the week 5 bye is because if you look at post bye, it's a really tough stretch. And it's one of those, if you move that bye to week 8, you know what I mean? And it's like, hey, okay, you went through Washington and the Ravens in 2 giant games for you in 3 weeks. Take a bye, take a rest, and then you have Bengals, Giants, Minnesota, right? So you have 2, giant games with a must-win against a divisional opponent in the middle of that, right? It would have been a good breakup there. But
Yeah.
instead, you have a really early bye. So for me, as I look at this schedule, that stands out to me. Another thing that stands out to me is 5 primetime games. So I consider primetime standalone. I guess the better way to put it is standalone games. Obviously, Monday Night Football week 1, Bears at Washington week 6 Monday Night Football, Caleb versus Jaden. That's going to be a ginormous game. You have the Friday Amazon Prime game, Bears at Eagles, week 13. Then you have week 16, Bears versus Packers in Chicago. That's the Saturday before Christmas, so that'll be a standalone Saturday game. And then they have the following week, Sunday Night Football after Christmas, Bears at Niners. Obviously, Bears and Lions week 18 could also be flex. So you could be looking at 6 Bears standalone / primetime games. I don't love that because we know historically the Bears really can poop the bed on primetime football, as we saw Thursday Night Football last year with that Seahawks game that was a disaster. It can make you nervous, can make you frustrated. 11 of the 17 games the Bears will play in 2025, 2026 are against playoff teams last year. Obviously, 6 in division, right? Because the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers all made the playoffs. That's a lot. When you add in the fact that you also then have playoff games against an NFC championship game in contender in Washington, you have the Ravens, you have a Bengals team that just missed the playoffs. The Bengals is one of the non-playoff teams. The Steelers, who are a playoff team.
Yeah.
You have the Eagles, who are a playoff team. And then you have the Niners late in the season as well. this is a really, really heavy schedule as far as quality opponents throughout. And obviously the NFC North
Yeah.
itself is just a high quality division. A couple other things that stood out to me. One of the things that I'm struggling with as far as a Bears homer and as a Bears fan and as a Caleb Williams stan, I'm struggling to get traction on online arguments about where Caleb Williams should rank going into this year, right? Because if you actually look at Caleb's stats, an almost 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, 20 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, over 3,400 yards passing. I mean, he had a really, really productive rookie year, like by any standards, an above average rookie year. And you're talking about 3 offensive coordinators, a head coach fired, and all of the drama, the most sacked quarterback of last year as well. So I personally think Caleb's starting the year in a much more like higher sensibility, especially with the additions of the weapons, the additions of the offensive line, the additions of the coaching staff. I'm very high on Caleb going into this year. I'm not saying he's a top 10 guy, but certainly you're seeing a lot of these rankings like Caleb Williams, 23rd, 22nd, 20, and I'm struggling with those rankings. And so, Dan, the point I want to make is that look at the quarterbacks Caleb will get to play this year one-on-one. Like by the end of the year, we're going to have a really good idea of where Caleb Williams is at. So let me list this off for you. He's got 2 games against Love, 2 games against McCarthy, and 2 games against Goff, right? Goff is the prototype of like, he is the prototypical pocket quarterback who needs help, right? He's somewhere in that 8-9 range, 10 range, a best quarterback. And so you'll get to measure him very clearly against Goff. You'll get to measure him very clearly against his contemporaries in Caleb, in Love, and of course McCarthy as well. Young, mobile, kind of big arm guys who are the new prototypical quarterback. So that's really exciting. Beyond the division, though, he gets a head-to-head matchup with Jaden Daniels. He gets a head-to-head matchup with Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. Damn.
Yeah.
Like those 3 guys are top 6 guys, right? So he's
well-rounded, and then even like a professional quality quarterback in Dak Prescott as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then he also gets a matchup against Dak to say, hey, this is a guy who everyone argues about where does Dak rank. He'll get a head-to-head matchup with Dak. He'll probably get a head-to-head matchup with Jackson Dart because of where they play the Giants in the schedule. I think by week 10, Jackson Dart's going to be starting for the New York Giants. Yeah. So he's going to get a head-to-head with a rookie quarterback, and another young quarterback. He's probably going to get a head-to-head with Shedeur Sanders, because of where they play the Browns. Week 15 against the Browns. So again, he gets that matchup. And when you sprinkle in, he gets a matchup early against Geno Smith, another guy who you rank like, oh, he's like 15th best. We'll get to see Caleb versus Geno. And then also the big name who just got paid, Brock Purdy, late in the season, bad weather in December in San Francisco. He gets a head-to-head matchup with Brock Purdy, who just got paid big money and is, again, the Jared Goff type of prototype, right? Well, if you surround him with a bunch of talent, he's a stud. So I think one of the things I'm most excited about this year when you look at the schedule is I'm going to have a much better way to rank Caleb Williams where he is going into year 3 amongst the NFL quarterbacks than I do right now. Yeah, he doesn't get a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes matchup. Well, he's not Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. He would have to win the MVP and throw for 45 touchdowns and 10 interceptions and lead the Bears to the 1 seed for me to start comparing him to those 2 guys. And as high as him on the Bears, I don't think that's going to happen, right? But if he outduels Jalen Hurts in Philly, and the Bears are looking like a playoff team, and he plays well again, like in week 13. We're going to have some conversations, right? If he outduels Jordan Love, if he beats Jordan Love in Chicago, in late December when they're both battling for maybe the division, and he outduels Jordan Love, we're going to have some really great fun discussions. So that's all really exciting. And then there's a possibility maybe he even plays Aaron Rodgers and we get to watch that, week 12. Yep. So all of that being said, before I kind of I put my cap in the feather of this discussion, I want to talk about.
Leave its feather in the cap.
Yeah, feather. Yeah, whatever. I'm just trying to get through it here. Yeah, there's so much, right? I could talk for 3 hours. I mean, I could dissect every game, but I think you have to look at 2 stretches that are going to be really crucial for this Bears team. 3 of the final 4 games. Yes, they're tough games. Cleveland, Packers, Niners, Lions. But 3 of the 4 are at home. And the on-the-road game is a game at San Francisco where it's not going to be snowy and 20 degrees. It could be rainy and it could be chilly, but San Francisco in December is not going to be the frozen tundra, right? So you're going to get favorable conditions, and you're going to have the Lions and the Packers. If you lost your games on the road against the Lions and the Packers, you have them in your sights at home to even the series, right? And you have a must win against Cleveland thrown in there as well. It's like, okay, you have to win Cleveland. Can you win 1 or 2 of the other games? In a must win to get in the playoffs. So I think that sets them up really well for a late season push. The other stretch that's really critical, Dan, and we talked about it, if you're going to have your bye in week 5, that 4 games after the bye, you have to find a way to go 3-1 or 2-2. So it's at Washington, home against the Saints, at Ravens, at Bengals. Okay.
The Saints game is an absolute must-win. If I were to say anything's a must-win on this schedule, it's the Saints game.
Saints game is a must-win, and that Giants game as well. So, right, so you have those kind of breaks, but I'm going to look at those 4 games and say, can you find a way to beat the Saints at home and a team that is probably going to be tanking this year that we don't have high hopes for, and you got to steal 1. You just got to steal 1 against Washington, Baltimore, and Cincy. And I think the Bears are capable of that, right? So if the Bears can steal 1, let's just say they steal the Washington game, Monday Night Football, Caleb outduels Jaden in a rematch of the failed Mary last year. The Bears get an avenge, right? And then they beat the Saints. I could make the argument the Bears are 5-1 through week 7. You lose at the Lions, but you're better than Dallas. You win home against Minnesota. You beat the Raiders. Can you steal the game against Washington? You beat the Saints. You're 5-1 playing with house money. And then you look at Ravens, Bengals, Giants, Minnesota, and you say, hey, now we just got to go 2-2 in this stretch, right? Yeah. So again, that's getting way ahead of ourselves, but I'm just telling you why that's a crucial stretch. Because if you look at the first 4 games of the year, I think it sets up really well for the Bears. Home against the Vikings against a rookie quarterback. That crowd's going to be electric. I think the Bears can get a W. You lose at Detroit in an emotional get back for Ben Johnson. You dominate Dallas, a team that you're just better than on the roster. And I think you have a better quarterback and a better head coach. And you win that game. You go to Vegas. That's going to be an almost Bears home crowd. The Bears fans are going to take over Las Vegas. The Raiders are a competent football team, but I think you can absolutely win that game. You're 3-1 at the bye. I think that's very, very plausible for this Bears team. So for me, this is my final thing I'll say. Here is Mark's, write it down. 3 steps to the Bears making the playoffs. Here it is. This is how the Chicago Bears make the playoffs. Obviously, health, blah, blah, blah. Sweep Minnesota. The Bears have got to be better than Minnesota. You cannot make the playoffs if you are not at least better than Minnesota or the Lions or the Packers. But I'm going to say Minnesota because I think Minnesota is the more vulnerable team with the rookie quarterback. And I don't think they're – we'll see. I think that the defense is still young and improving. Obviously, Flores is good, but I think they're the ones with the rookie quarterback that's vulnerable. So you have to sweep Minnesota. You can't finish 4th in the division and make the playoffs. It's just not happening. And then you have to split with Detroit and Green Bay. So that means 4-2 in division, right? This division is too good. If you want to make the playoffs, you've got to find a way to go 4-2 in division. Maybe that's you sweep Detroit and you split Minnesota and Green Bay. You know what I mean? But find a way to go 4-2 in division. So that's steps 1 and that's step 2. Step 3, if you do those two things, you have to find 6 wins then, right? If you're 4-2 in division, you have to find 6 wins out of your remaining 11 games. So can you find a way to go 6-5 in the remaining games? And I think when you look at the games the Bears have, it's really plausible. You got to get.
So you think they need to get to
10 wins?
Okay, yeah, 10. That's 10.
10
okay,
wins.
Yeah.
So can you get from the AFC? You play the AFC North. So can you beat the Browns? I think absolutely. I think the Bears will be very competitive against Pittsburgh. I think the Bears will be very competitive against Cincinnati. So can you go 2-2 against the AFC North, right? So there's 2 wins. And then all you have to do is get 3 wins or 4 wins out of the Niners, the Eagles, the Giants, the Saints, Washington, Dallas, and the Raiders. So I think the Bears are better than the Giants, the Saints, and Dallas. There's, I think, 3.
And the Raiders.
And then I would add, so then you have to get 1 win out of the Raiders, the Niners, the Eagles, Washington. Like it's so when you break it down like that, I think it's really plausible. But again, all of that formula only relies on going 4-2 in division. This has to be a year you turn it around in division. This division is, to me, the best division in the NFC. I think you make the argument it's the best division in football, top down, 4 extremely high quality head coaches. We believe Ben Johnson will elevate right away into a very high quality head coach. And so you have 4 very high quality head coaches. You have 4 what we believe will be above average quality starting quarterbacks to Pro Bowl level caliber quarterbacks. You have 4 offenses that all have number 1 guys and tight ends and number 2 guys. And you have offenses that all have running games. And then you have defenses that are really elite at different things. Especially when you add in the Vikings having maybe the best defensive coordinator in football. This is a tough division. So it has to be 4-2 in division. How you get there, I don't know, but get there. And if you do that, then all you got to do is win 6 of 11 games. And there are definitely 6 winnable games when you talk about Bengals, Giants, Saints, Dallas, Browns, Steelers, Raiders. Like there's winnable games in there. And then can you upset an Eagles? Can you upset a Niners? Can you upset a Washington team? I think the Bears absolutely are capable of doing that. So I'm going to say 10 wins is very, very plausible for the Chicago Bears team. Obviously health and all those things. So there you go, Dan. There's my formula.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean 10 wins is probably the floor that they'll need to reach to get to the postseason in that division, because that's probably good enough to be second in the division, especially depending on how you play within the division. I would agree. Going into the season, I wouldn't have said they needed to go 4-2 in the division, but seeing the schedule and how things are stacked up, I do think that that's kind of a requirement now based on what we're seeing here with how they have this schedule laid out. And I agree in terms of the stretches. When I first saw the schedule, my mind went directly to the final 3 games. I said, that's a tough ending to the season, but it is at home. 2 of those 3, but Packers, 49ers, Lions is a really tough, way to end the year. So you have those 2 opportunities in division right there. The other one was I just took a big chunk out of the middle of the schedule, and it's the week 8 through week 14.
It's tough.
Like, to me, those 7 games, 6 of those are difficult. You would say 5 are really tough, and then Pittsburgh could go either way, and then it's the Giants that you should win. So that's going to be middle of the season, a large chunk, really difficult stretch. It's reminiscent of the Steelers' final, 6 games this past year. And thankfully they'll have an opportunity to rebound afterwards, hopefully with the Browns, and then go into that final stretch. The only thing I'll say is like the week 5 bye sucks. I'm right there with you. The only thing I would say is that if you're going to have a week 5 bye, I would like to have it with a rookie head coach in a new regime. I actually think this can
That's
work to the
valid.
Bears' favor. Um, I think you'll have a solid understanding of where you're at. Now you've played a month of football, 2 at home, 2 away, different offensive styles you're playing against, different levels of quarterback competence that you're playing with,
Yeah.
and you're getting 2 divisional games in there too. So you're gonna have a good idea of the initial Ben Johnson, where we're at as a club, and I think that'll be a good opportunity for them to either reset or
Take a breath.
double down,
Take a breath. Yeah.
going into that final stretch.
Yeah.
Final stretch being
You
the
know,
last 12 games.
week 1 is really important because if you lose week 1 at home against the Vikings and it doesn't go well, then you're on a short week and you're going to Detroit.
Could
And then
cascade.
and then you're really in fear of starting 0-2 and the wheels coming off. And we know Chicago media and Chicago fandom. So it's a huge linchpin. I think they're capable of doing it. I'm excited to watch this Bears team through the summer and practice and see what kind of ceiling I really think they have. And so I'm excited. And obviously, we can keep an eye on that Week 12 matchup, the Bears and Steelers. And Aaron Rodgers, Dan was talking about maybe playing in Chicago because he might be the quarterback. It's hard for you to break down the Steelers' schedule when you don't really know who your starting quarterback's going to be. But let's see what you got.
Yeah, I was gonna say that exactly. I was gonna say this is not gonna be nearly as exciting of a
It's
discussion
hard.
as the Steelers one or as the Bears one was, mainly because we just, like you said, we don't know who is there at quarterback, the most important position. But I'll do my best to break this down. The good news going into this, before we just to get it out of the way, to me, a lot of the analysis, however, isn't going to change the win count for me that much. Now, where the wins come from and how the wins are acquired might be different. To me, with Mason Rudolph, assuming that, if Aaron Rodgers isn't there, that Mason Rudolph's going to be the starting quarterback this year. For me, the floor is 8 wins and that's giving them the first losing season under Tomlin ever, right? So like I was almost reticent to even do that because he has shown that he can win with whoever, including Mason Rudolph. But I'll say the floor is 8 wins. As I lose my screen for some reason. The floor would be 8 wins, and then I'm going to go ahead and give a ceiling of 10 with Mason Rudolph. With Aaron Rodgers, I think the floor is 9 wins and the ceiling is 11.
Okay.
So one more win with Aaron
Can
Rodgers
I ask
of a
really quick,
potential ceiling to reach.
with that Mason Rudolph season, do you factor in at any point in time they go to the rookie?
Yeah. I mean, I could absolutely see that. Yeah, if things are struggling, but I think Mason Rudolph will get a certain, amount of wiggle room there. Just because they like him. Like, it's not going to be before the bye.
Yeah.
But as you start to get into these, middle games of the season against the Bengals, the Packers, and then you get Colts, Chargers. Like, I could see week 9 against the Colts being a softer landing spot for a Will Howard.
Yeah.
And then you get the Chargers that you could just pound the rock and kind of, compete with them that way. Mike Tomlin's all about, it's difficult to get guys moving on a moving train. And so that would be the worries if they wait too long, that then it'll never happen because they don't want to throw Will Howard to the wolves. But if I had my druthers, I would just say let's start Will Howard all season. Let's either win 5 games and get a top 10 pick, and Will Howard got great experience, whatever, or you have something in Will Howard. You still go 6 or 7 wins, but maybe you feel comfortable with the guy, and now you can, get a high draft pick and don't have to take a quarterback. Like there's a lot of possibilities there that I look forward to.
I'm with you. I get it.
But I still am confident Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback of this team at some point. Everything seems to be going that way. So I'm going to discuss this with that in mind, but just know not too much changes with Mason Rudolph at the helm. Um, Similar to the Bears, I think the first start of the season is going to be super important for Pittsburgh. They once again, per Warren Sharp, have the toughest um, run in the league when it comes to week 11 on. So they have, week 11 on is Bengals, Bears, Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, Lions, Browns, Ravens. Browns are the only breathing room I see in there.
Well,
And
home
maybe the
against the
Bears.
Dolphins. Home against the Dolphins.
The Dolphins,
Dolphins
yes.
are not going to play well at Pittsburgh
That's
on
fair.
December 15th.
That's fair. I feel okay about that game as well, but they do have a lot of firepower, and you can put up a lot of points, so that would just be my worry there. But yeah, no, that's fair. That's an easier game, but they're potentially a playoff team in that group as well. So the start of the season is going to be super important at the Jets right away. I mean, I would take Pittsburgh in this game, but I think it's super close. I think it's very difficult. Pittsburgh's really good at defending against mobile quarterbacks, and Justin Fields is a first-time quarterback in this system with a first-year head coach. I think that sets up well for Pittsburgh. They usually will come into the season pretty well prepared, and a well-oiled machine. Then they got to take on, the Seahawks at home with Sam Darnold. That's certainly not going to be a cakewalk game for Pittsburgh, but I think they can certainly win that. And then, you've got the Patriots and the Vikings to round things out. The Vikings in Dublin, which is going to be a very emotional game for Pittsburgh. And it's going to feel like a home game there. So you hope that they can go 3-1 during that first portion of the season. I kind of feel like they almost have to be honest with you, because things can fall apart really quickly. If they do, I guess the bright side is they have that bye to reset early, but you really don't want that to be the case that early on. To come right out of it with back-to-back AFC North games, less than ideal. I think, Warren Sharp, and we will talk more about this as we get into our predictions much later this year, did that breakdown of, who has rest advantages all throughout the year. Pittsburgh has -3 overall rest disadvantage days against all of their opponents. Not good. That's
No.
bottom 12 in the league. Ravens last year had about a +18 days, which was the most that Warren Sharp has ever been able to chart. So think about that. +18, -3, big discrepancy there. Not bode well for Pittsburgh. They have that short week there against the Bengals. That's going to be a tough game. And then, you go into your NFC North games, and then, you're playing the Chargers and the Colts. I would feel confident in. It's a game they should win, but the Colts have given them problems for the last 15 years. It seems they've always struggled against the Colts, especially on the road. That's going to be tough. But for me, it's all about what are they going to be able to do in that post-bye run, because I also think you got to find a way to get 3 wins out of those 5
Yeah.
against the Browns, Bengals, Packers, Colts, and Chargers. 3 wins is kind of a must for me, because going back against the Bengals, you're going to probably split with Cincinnati, probably going to split with Baltimore, going to need to sweep the Browns, I feel, to go 4-2 and give yourself some more cushion here, because gosh, after week 11, Mark,
Is that Sunday night at Chargers too?
It's a Sunday night football game against the Chargers.
That's a tough one.
The Steelers travel well. That'll be like a home game for them. They always pack it in LA, but yeah, it's going to be really tough. They're going to have to the run game is going to have to really be dominant this year for them
Najee
to
Harris revenge
have a
game.
chance. Yeah, right. Absolutely.
If Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback, you have a ton of revenge games. You got the Jets, you got the Packers, you got the Chargers game.
Yeah, and then you have the Rodgers owning the Bears narrative.
Yeah, there's a lot.
With that
there's a
in
lot
there.
of narratives with that. You're right.
Yep. And then obviously week 1 would also be the reverse, with Fields playing his former team from a year ago too. And so yeah, no, it's very interesting, but really got to hunker down from week 11 on, because you've got back-to-back away games against the Lions and the Browns, Like, you got to find a way to split those 2 games at the end of the year, because then you're finishing the season against the Ravens, and we all know that's going to have implications of some
Yeah.
sort on it. Um, so, once again, very condensed grouping of divisional games. Last year, they didn't play a divisional game until week 11. This year, they play one in week 7 and then all the rest week 11 on. So, yeah, it's all packed into those final 7 weeks to me. Um, and you got to win the games that you should win, and then you got to steal one. Can you somehow find some magic and beat a Lions team, or sweep the Bengals this year? I don't know, but those are going to be the determining factors for me. And yeah, it's going to be a new, revamped version of Arthur Smith's offense this year. Um, a lot's come out about how he had to really tone down his offense for the personnel. Najee Harris is not a very good zone runner. He's a very much a downhill, hit the gap and go. Arthur Smith likes his running backs to read the gaps and then hit them. Caleb Johnson fits very well into that mold, so I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how he can do. Jalen Warren, that fits his style. They're going to be able to lean much more into that, and hopefully they'll be able to get more out of their wide receiver 2 and 3 position, because they're going to need it to have some sort of potency. Because we look at the defense the defenses they're playing this year, they're going to have to really come through, and that's why, like, the Patriots and Vikings early on, that scares me. Normally, like last year, I would have felt really comfortable with that.
This
And
Patriots
then
team
obviously
got a lot
Darnold went
better.
off, and then you were like, oh shoot, the Vikings are really good. But going
Yeah.
into the year, I was like, oh, that would be a winnable game in the Patriots. But now Mike Vrabel, Drake May's good. Like, that is not an easy game. That's on the road. And then the Vikings are really talented. Yeah, it's a rookie quarterback, but Kevin O'Connell has shown that, he runs a tight ship and got one of the best D coordinators as well. So tough schedule. I think I would predict 9 wins for them. But 8 would not shock me. And I don't even know if 7 would. And that's the first time I've been able to say that in quite some time.
Listen, I'll say this. I really think if Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback, this is almost a must-watch game every week. Like, there's so much entertainment value from that. And I think if Aaron Rodgers is the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, I can see the stretches where it's like, hey, we're playing good football. Mike Tomlin wins random games. Mike Tomlin finds ways. Like, I think you look down the stretch, that home game versus Miami, I think that's a W. You got the Bills at home. That could be one of those games where it's just like, how did the Steelers win that thing like 17-12? You know what I mean? And it's just like an ugly football game. And
it's like a pseudo primetime game. It's the premium slot, 320, 425.
Josh has an off day. Like, Mike Tomlin is just good at that. I'm very intrigued by the schedule. I will say early on the schedule is ugly. Like, Pittsburgh.
It is. Yeah, it's not great.
Pittsburgh versus Seattle, Pittsburgh versus the Vikings. And then it's after the
It's got
bye.
a lot of like 17-13 vibes across that entire first month.
Yeah, and then after the bye, it's must-watch games. Obviously AFC North divisional games, 2 in a row. Then you have the Aaron Rodgers drama with Green Bay. That game is home, so it's going to be an atmosphere that the Packers fans will try to travel. The Steelers fans are won't let it budge. That's going to be a really great atmosphere. And what'll be weird is you have, I think, 2 games there with the Colts and the Chargers. The Colts is your Saints game. You know how I talked about my Saints game?
Yeah.
That's your
Must win.
Everyone is circling that as a win for the Steelers. Just like as a Bears fan, I'm circling the Saints as a win. You have to win that game. Like, that's one of those, hey, we just went through a slog of 2 divisional opponents and the Packers. We have a tough game on the road against a very physical, good opponent at LA. I know the building will sound like it'll be a home game, but it's a physical Jim Harbaugh team. And then we come back to a divisional game against the Bengals. You cannot afford to not end up with a W there against the Colts. And then I think again, you look then at, hey, can we split some games? Can we upset some teams? Can we upset the Bears in Chicago? Absolutely. And then you do have, I think, some winnable games at the end with Miami snuck in there. Scroll down again to what's week 17 and 18. 18 is the Ravens.
Yeah, so they got
17
Browns
is
and
the Browns.
Ravens
So,
at the end of
so
the
the
season.
Browns, listen, you can go 2-4 down the stretch with that Miami and that Cleveland game. So if you're in a pinch, you can find a way to go 2-4, and maybe, who knows, the Ravens will be resting people by then, and you take advantage of them, and all of a sudden 3-1 and Pittsburgh sneaks in with Aaron Rodgers as a 9 or 10 win team. That wouldn't shock me at all. I think the stretch
Yeah.
down the stretch is really favorable, and at the Lions, again, the Lions roster is loaded, and the Lions quarterback is very good, and the Lions head coach is the ultimate culture guy in the NFL right now. But as far as who's calling defensive and offensive plays, we know nothing about the Detroit Lions. We know
This is
nothing.
very true.
So
Yeah.
while we say Detroit's a juggernaut because physically they are, on paper they are, head coach they are, as far as technically what Detroit is, we have no bleeping idea. So what will Detroit look like week 16? What if there's a big injury early in the season and this is just one of those, the gas comes out of Detroit, right? Really quickly.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, they had like 12 guys on IR last year, so that could certainly something similar could
But they
happen again.
had one of the top 3 defensive coordinators and the best offensive coordinator in football to
Right.
schematically carry the football team. We don't know what that's going to look like again for Detroit this year. I have a feeling Detroit's going to be very physical and they're going to be a really tough 10-win team. So I'm not counting on Detroit to be out, but to sit there and
Yeah.
say, "Oh God, Detroit, we got to go to Detroit." I think you're right. If you can survive that slog after the bye, the last 4 games, it's manageable for the Steelers if they're healthy and they're in the right spots.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's it'll be interesting. I mean, we got to see what happens with the quarterback position and how the season starts to really, see how we feel about the ending there, but the possibilities are there, and we know Mike Tomlin finds a way to pull rabbits out of the hat every now and then too. So, but yeah, that'll do it for me. I don't know if you've got any closing
No,
thoughts, Mark, but that was good. That was a nice little reprieve from the overall NFL news and really diving into our teams and getting to discuss that. Obviously, a lot more will come when we do our
for
predictions
sure.
late August before the season begins. But exciting to look at that as OTAs are underway. All right, well, hopefully we'll have some more news next time we're on the air as it relates to the Steelers quarterback position. But right now we remain in limbo. And that will do it for us here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. We'll see you back here next time.